Well, hello traders and investors. I'm Ellie Little and this is your daily NeoTA wrap. We take a look at these markets and we're doing it from a neoclassical perspective. That means we're looking at volume, supply and demand on the charts. We look at it each day, ask ourselves what happened today and what does it tell us about the coming ones. I do this show 4 times a week, every Monday through Thursdays, broadcast at before 10 o'clock Eastern Time, archived on YouTube in the center of a channel, LA Little. And if you want to subscribe, just reach up in the right-hand corner and do so. Anytime content's pushed, you'll get a notification. As far as what happened today, it was actually a up day in most of these indexes, and that was despite the big Apple sell-off. And so once again, this market shows that it's just totally resilient. Slightly higher here on the S&P, Russell higher as well. Of course, the Apple brought down the NASDAQ, the NDX. Those have been lagging for a while. If you remember last year, what lagged last year? Well, it was the Russell, right? Last year and a half. Whereas the NDX outran. What is it now? NDX is lagging, the Russell's outrunning. You flipped it around. That big spread that developed is being slowly taken away. If you look elsewhere overseas, you had markets moving higher. You had oil up big. You actually had gold and silver holding on to gains after the Fed. Fed basically said, we don't know. We're going to look at the data, right? So the Fed didn't really tell us anything different. The only thing I saw in that Fed report when I read it was that they didn't talk about the overseas concerns that they had talked about before. Outside of that, it looked exactly the same. Tonight you got the Bank of Japan. What are they going to do? That's really where the story is going to be. Before we jump into the currencies, let's look at the charts and let's dissect them and see what we can find. And in doing so, we're going to kind of split hairs here tonight. And so bear with me because, it's really about supply and demand. It's where you have something of significance that you can measure against that tells you something about what's going on. And so if we look at the S&P chart here, the daily chart, right? You got a swing point high here. You had the breakout there, right? That breakout's top was tested, has been tested last 4 days. It's come into it each of those 4 days, and each of those days, volume has been lower except for today, right? Picked up today. So what was the volume today? 41 mil. Going into 41.9, almost 42. What does that mean? You don't have enough volume. If it's almost the same. Yeah, you could test again, but if you don't have enough volume to take it out, you're eventually going to roll back and go the other way. If you can't take it out, folks, it's about test. The market is about test over and over and over. And if you can't find the sellers, then you're not going to break down. And so if I'm looking at this S&P chart, as I said to the members today in the room, it's not going to take it out, right? The case was there, couldn't do it, back the other way. Russell in particular was showing us that because if we look at the Russell didn't even close under the low. Volume expands. This thing can still go higher. NDX, of course, was where the problems were. So let's look at the NDX. Does it tell us something? Well, yes, it does, actually. If you come back to the big bar, and this big bar was quad witching, if I remember correctly, top of that bar is here, right? Gets into it, gets underneath it, tests the bottom of it. What does it do? Gets underneath it, doesn't have the volume, right? So the test underneath doesn't have the volume, so you can see the huge discrepancy in volume. Flips around, does a little hammer type reversal, and if you go back and you look at the high here, 44.20, where does it close? 44.16. It's still inside the bar, so tomorrow's the key, but as far as today, what does it tell you? Doesn't want to go lower, not yet. Maybe in the future. Right now, it's not going to do it. It's going to flip around, take it back the other way. Now, what did you do today? You actually broke a swing point low. That's going to be resistance on the way up, and actually, if you come back into that area and you test it immediately, it will be a bearish retest, regenerate. What does that mean? Well, that means in neoclassical terms that you're going to try to get to the top part of that zone and test it up there. And so that's going to be the real test. More than likely, it's going to try to bounce up into that area, and that's where you want to be looking to see what happens next. So the assumption is it will try to get back into this bar. If it does, it's going to try to get to the top of the bar. If it gets up there, then what does it do next? That's where you'll get the next set of clues. This is the weakest sector, so if you want to be bearish, what you want to see is you want to see it bounce, you want to see it test, you want to see it fail, regenerate lower, right? That's what it means. You break it, right? Then you come back into it and you try to regenerate in the direction of the break. That's how bearish trends get underway. That's the indexes. That's how they stand tonight. So if I look at them and nothing else, market's going to try to trade higher tomorrow. That is the way that lines up. But let's go look at the currencies, because the currencies is where things are going to be. And they're going to be tonight. We did see, and so we had the euro dollar currency moves today, but you know, they really didn't do much. You had a doji, you didn't have much volume. This is on the FXE. You just kind of sit in that range, hasn't done anything yet. It's broken down below the swing point highs on this retest. That says at best it's probably sideways for a while, not higher. And so let's do the retest regen here so that we're on the same page and we're talking about the same thing. You got two swing point highs that were both broken on the way up. As they break, what happens? Well, you get a higher high. What does it do though? It can't keep going, so it comes back down. When it comes back to retest, what happens? Well, when it retests, it doesn't hold. So in other words, just like we were just talking about the regenerate, if you come back down and you hold, then you can regenerate higher. Well, it didn't. When you don't hold, that says that what was going on no longer is that, and more than likely, at least for a while, it's going to be this or potentially that. And so that's what you're looking at. That's where the trades are. If this starts to push back higher, then that consolidation has been nothing more than a consolidation in a longer trend. If we bring up the longer trend, the weekly, right, then that would be saying that this move up, right, has stalled, has pulled back, and now potentially can become an ABCD structure to the top side. That's on the longer term time frame if it starts to push higher. But it's got to get higher, right? Otherwise, it doesn't mean anything. There's not much there to read in terms of which direction it's going to go yet. I think the real story is going to be what happens with the yen tonight. Before I move on to the yen, let's look at the dollar just to see if there's any volume expansion there. A little bit, tested higher, tested lower, finished in the middle. So again, it doesn't really tell us anything. The real key tonight, I suspect, is going to be Japan. Can Japan talk their dollar back down or their yen back down? Can they demolish the yen? Because for so long, you know, trashing the yen has been the way to rise up in the markets. Now, this week so far, there's a long tail, but we have volume and we're not done with a week. My suspicion is whatever they do tonight is not going to do anything for the yen. And the push up into this area is still probably going to try and take place. That's the longer term view. If they do bring it back, again, it would be a bullish retest regen for the yen. So in other words, if they do come back in and get in here and stay in here this week, then the test would be to the low of this area. If not, right, then you regenerate higher and you try to push up to that next zone. And so that's the yen. The currencies, in my opinion, still are the main things to be looking at. What we have happening is we have huge divergence in the markets, but the majority of the markets, in particular the majority of the stocks, continue to move higher. If you want to know what's moving, it's not that hard. You just go inside. You can do it multiple ways. One way to do it here easily, come to the resources, do current trends, do this market watch. Let me pull it in so you can see it. All right, then what you can see is you can see what these trends are. So for example, the intermediate term trend on the financials is still bearish, but what do you have? You went from bearish to sideways already on the energy. You've done the same on the materials, right? The materials have moved. If you watch this over time, materials have moved. The materials are trying to change these trends now. Same thing on the energy. That's where all the strength is coming from. The move has been out of most of these equities and into a lot of the commodity type stocks. You do have some other things happening. For example, the industrials look extremely strong. And so, if you're looking for places to trade, you go to the strong sectors. If I've told you once, I've told you many times, right? Stocks move sectors, and then the sectors move the general markets. The way they move them is from the short-term time frame to the intermediate, from the intermediate to the long. And so if you're looking at where to put your money, you want to see the trend transitions taking place. If you're doing swing trades on the intermediate term time frame, you want to see them getting stronger over time. And that's what's been happening in some of these sectors, and those are the sectors you should be playing in. If you want to know more about how to find these things and how to make money on these things, all you have to do is pop over, do a get started, pop in here. Got these various things that we offer. In particular, there's unlimited access to my broadcast, to the comments I put out each morning to the traders, the trading portfolio that I share with the traders, up 3.5%, almost 4% now this year, and we've done that with almost no risk, and that's since recently we've had a nice run. The chat rooms that are out there, including one that's tied to this portfolio, weekend broadcast, members only, and all these tools, unlimited access, the ones you see me using. Many of these I don't show all that often. I use them. Members use them. Trading Cube is useful. The sector trends, again, scanners, trading signals. So many stocks you can uncover and help you zero in on where the winners are. That's it for tonight, folks. Look for this market to try to bounce. And then as the index gets back up to the area of resistance, we'll see if it wants to come back down. That's it for tonight. Have a great one. Tell a friend, tell two. I'm LA. This is and was your daily NeoTA broadcast. See you next time. Good night.